Hey guys! So, today we're going to talk about the thing that I like the least about front-end development. So let's get into it. Now, I don't know how you want, because I start to feel like I kind of feel like I have to say this every single time I start even using the word front-end. Because there seems to be this dispute what it actually means, but per my definition, the realm of JavaScript is usually connected to the term front-end. And unfortunately for people like myself, that means, even though technically I'm not a front-end developer anymore, technically I'm a full-stack developer. That's what my job specification says, but any time there's a problem with anything that has to do with CSS, JavaScript, HTML, you name it, or Node, they ring my bell. And unfortunately, this time I also answered the call. So my boss comes over to me and seems to be a little bit in a conundrum. And that scares the shit out of me, because if he is in a conundrum, there's something really wrong. Because he's damn good at what he does. He leaps and bounds better at software development than I am. So if he has a problem, it's going to be a tough one. So he kind of comes over and says, Frederick, I don't know. I have this weird issue where, like, I have this, I don't know, like, it seems that all of our unit tests is, like, for our JavaScript, is failing, like, and I can't really figure out why. And I go, okay, I can have a look at it. Can you give me some hint? And he kind of explains, yeah, there seems to be is complaining about some type of transpilation issue, yada, yada, yada. And I kind of just say, all right, I'll just give it a bash and see what we can do. So I sit down, have a look, and now we come to this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful cascade of garbage. This beautiful flow, like it's almost like assembly line of problems. Because we have made the same damn fatal mistake that every single person does. We have thought, wow, we're gonna do unit testing and we're gonna use Mocha, but we're not going to understand the semantic differences between running our JavaScript in Node versus running it in the browser. So what we're gonna do is that on top of doing that, we're going to include our SAS files using Webpack in our components, and we're going to of course use Webpack aliases, which allows us to abstract away certain parts of a URL, because hey, it's a hassle to write all these dot slash all that stuff, right? That's a hassle. So we couple ourselves just a little bit tighter to Webpack, and then finally to put the crowning on it all, or the icing on the cake, is that we are going to also use lazy loading, and we're going to use chunking basically in order to do dynamic imports, which is great. It's so great. I mean, all these things, guys, they are amazing, and if you can use them correctly, they are actually really good at what they do. I still have some fairly strong opinions about inlining your styles in JavaScript. I still think CSS modules is a really dumb idea. There's absolutely there's no reason, none, to not use BEM. It's superior in every single way, and that is opinionated. That's okay, because it is opinionated, and it's tied into this massive amount of bullshit that you kind of have to deal with, and you see the gain, you see the benefit versus the cost. Because if we're going to talk about the cost now, what the issue that my boss is experiencing is that basically he's trying to run we've had the fortunate situation where basically all of the files that we've been using so far have not been part of anything that is Webpack specific. That's why the unit tests have been working so far. It's just been pure JavaScript. But now we have issues such as TypeScript. We're adding TypeScript into the thing, and that means that now we need to have a compiler step or a transpilation step in between in order for Mocha to actually understand what the hell's going on. So I add that in. I had a nice little transpiler in order to kind of handle this thing. Everything works. A few days later, we have another problem, and once again, it's related to our unit tests. So I sit down and I have a look, and this is basically what I'm still looking at it today. And now the problem is that, as you kind of suspected, because I said earlier, okay, now we have an alias problem. How do you solve that? And the same thing goes with the lazy loading. That was also an issue. How do you solve this issue? Because the fundamental problem is that the people working at the company, they are unaware of the distinction between running their JavaScript, like the part of JavaScript that we actually bundle through Webpack, how that's going to behave in the browser as opposed to how it's going to behave in Node. So what people usually do, and I start going through the product and I see that, all right, in order to simulate the DOM, we use JS DOM, which is also great, where you're just adding more stuff on top. And now we're in this awesome situation where the only feasible way to solve this, because we have literally coupled ourselves so tightly to basically to Webpack, that the only way to solve this problem, where you still want to run your unit test, right? The only way is to basically run Webpack on our tests before we can even run Mocha. And that goes the same, it's the same for Jest, the same for all of these things. And it is because we are tying ourselves so closely into Webpack specific features. This is something I warned every single person. As soon as they were talking about aliases, as soon as they were talking about lazy loading and all that great stuff, I told them you need to consider that there has to be a separation between these features and our unit test, otherwise it's going to fail. No one listens. Anywho, I start looking into it, and as I can basically what I want to tell you guys here is that there is a very, very, very good reason why I argue that you have to know certain things about JavaScript and frontend and so forth in order to kind of understand these things. That's why I keep on telling you guys it is not as simple. Maybe for a junior, because a junior may not have to face these sorts of issues. But as soon as you have a few years of experience, these are the sorts of things that you're going to have to deal with, and that means that it's very important for you to understand how, like, what the differences between Node is and what the differences between the browser is. What features are actually part of, in this case, ES 2015 or ES6. I prefer to call it that. It's shorter. And what's included in that and what's not. Because if you don't understand these differences, it becomes almost all but impossible for you to kind of understand how to solve this sort of problem. Now, the two options that we have to solving this sort of problem is either to take the easy route, or that is, well, easy is a relative term. The easy route is to say that, all right, because we have this coupling, we now need to trace all of our dependencies, because that's also a nice little thing that people don't really get, which is that when you import things, even if you use this destructuring in order to do an import, unless it's an explicit import, you still parse the file. Like Mocha and TypeScript, like the TypeScript compiler, are still going to go through the files and they're still going to complain at you, which is another, like, it's tied into this not really understanding how the platform actually works. So, and to solving that problem, it's actually, look at Lodash. They have the best solution of any library I've ever seen to solving this dependency issue, where you can either import the whole library and destructure in order to extract what you want, or you can explicitly say, I just want that file, and that's what you're going for if you want to avoid this dependencies hell. But in order to solve that, we can, and that's one option, just trace our way through all of the imports that kind of causes the issue. Like, look at the tests, look at what files it's requiring, and then simply exclude anything that is going to tie into Webpack specific features. That way we can do the separation. And as I said, the second thing, which is the thing I'm going to try now, which is, it's not good, because it adds quite a lot of overhead to your testing process if you have to compile, especially when you have a really slow, a really big configuration with a lot of files. It takes a little while to make Webpack just go through all of the files and then spit out something on the other end. And what's even more ugly is that now, in order to make that work, you have to have some type of entry points, and you need to hack things together in order to even be able to, within the context of Webpack, produce the bundles that you then run Mocha against. So basically what you're going to do, or in this scenario, what the option that is remaining because of the tight coupling, is to use Webpack, produce a bundle that just includes all of the tests, and shove that into Mocha, run the tests. That's not going to be a great testing experience, but in this scenario, we're kind of between a rock and a hard place. Either we have to rethink the way that we do work, or we're going to have to try this approach. And if there's a way out that doesn't require a new way of working and a big overhaul, that's usually the better option, at least from the company's perspective. So what I want you to take away from this, guys, is that it is vital that you understand certain, and this comes with experience and a lot of pain. You have to understand the differences between the different platforms. In other words, what is Node? How does it work? What syntax flies in Node? And dear God, if you add ES6 to your stack just to get imports, I'm sorry, I'll not judge you, but I don't really like that. Know what's in the standards for Node, for the browser, know what the differences are, and know what the hell is specific to Webpack. Because if you start with, in this case, mixing these, that is just a recipe for disaster, where you're simply trying to figure out new ways to make all these three different platforms work together in the way that you want. And that's just not, there's just so much wasted time and energy going into that, and often you find that you need to have someone who has a really intimate knowledge of all these three platforms to actually make sense of it all. Have a great day.